before we get into today's video, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. But without further ado, today we're talking about 10 creative poses that you can use for your next portrait session. I'm here with my friend and model Emma. Emma, say hi. And we are going to talk about 10 really fun poses that you can use whether you are a model or a photographer watching this video. This video will be super helpful for you. The space we're in today is a pretty clean slate. It's a small room with just natural light, and I did use my flash for some photos, but all of these portraits and poses can be utilized and done in any kind of space, which is why I'm making this video for you, and we'll have to ignore that. Bear with me for that, but Emma, you ready?
Yes, let's do it.
Let's go for it. Pose number one is a pretty easy one to start with. You're gonna have your model sitting on the floor and have their bottom leg knee bent flat on the floor with their other top leg crossed over that bottom leg, also with a bent knee. I shot this photo at a low angle at Emma's leg height to create a much more long figure from the legs up. Depending on what clothing and shoes the model is wearing, there might be better placements for that top leg. Just play around with it and see what looks best for the camera, but overall, the idea here is to have both legs bent with that top leg bent over the other leg. Pose number two, you're gonna have your model with one knee kneeling flat on the floor and the other foot is going to be bent and the foot is flat on the floor. Your model should have a bit of a wide stance in terms of having their knees apart, and I liked how Emma put her arm on that top knee just to create a much more slouchy and full look. What really worked for this pose was to have Emma lean into the pose as opposed to making sure her posture was perfectly upright. Leaning in created a much more intimate feeling to this pose. Even though in real life it might look a bit uncomfortable, it looks really nice on camera. Pose number three, and I thought this one worked really well flat up against the wall with direct flash. You're gonna have your model just standing straight flat up against the wall and then drop one shoulder very drastically compared to the other shoulder. So one shoulder down, one shoulder up, and then have their hands rested somewhere along their waistline. Whether it's on their hips or on a pair of pants or shorts, anything like this will create the same kind of shape, but the main idea here is to have that drop shoulder. Pose number four is a lifted leg. Now, we didn't have the best chair for this. We had a very janky, random black stool. So a nicer chair with a better color or material would have looked way better for this shot, but it's all we had to work with today. Basically for this shot, you want to have your model sit in a chair, leaning back ever so slightly, and then while balancing on one foot, you're going to have her bring her other foot way up in the air as high as possible towards the camera. In terms of shooting and framing this photo, it works best to have that lifted foot as close to the camera as possible to create a long leading line from the foot all the way to the actual subject, the model. And this image is shot from a high angle at the same height as the foot because, well, that's where the foot is, so it only makes sense to have it in the foreground, leading our eyes to the subject. Pose number five, you're gonna have your model sitting on the floor with just their upper back leaned up against a wall. And then you're gonna have their legs and their feet spread out in front of them in a pretty wide stance. This creates a really slouchy and lazy look that looks so fun on camera. And then in terms of shooting and angle, you wanna shoot this shot quite low at the same height as the model's torso. Okay, real quick pause. Let's take a moment for the model.
Hi, my name is Emma. I'm from Toronto. I'm currently studying psychology at Queen's University, and the fun fact is I went to a competitive figure skated for about 10 years.
All right, pose number six is a variation of one of the earlier poses where you have your model standing pressed up against the wall, and with that same drop shoulder, you're gonna have them bring one of their feet up to the top of their thighs to create a sharp V angle with their legs. When you combine that with the drop shoulder and a bit of a fun rotating angle as you shoot, this can be a fun, easy, and effective pose. Pose number 7, another sitting down pose. You're gonna have your model sitting on the floor with one knee bent in front of them and the other leg flat against the floor. This one's a much more casual and easy pose and can be done in a million different ways. But what I liked, what we did with this pose, was we added that hand, in this case, Emma's right hand, also flat on the floor with that flat leg. This allowed her to lean more on an angle so that the pose was much more elongated and less rigid, and I think is a really simple yet creative pose to do with any kind of model. Pose number 8 works best with a stool. You're going to have your model sit on the stool with one foot on the stool with them to make a much more cozier feel to the image. We either had Emma slouch her back and put her hands in front of her, or sit nice and tall with her hands over top playing with her hair. Pose number 9, another one that works well with the angle of the shot and the pose itself. You're going to have the model sit on the floor with their knees bent and their feet touching, but their knees apart. And then what we thought looked really cool was to add these prayer hands out in front of them and shoot from a higher angle. And last but not least, pose number 10, the most abstract pose, but also a really fun one, is to create this almost dancer figure by having your model on her knees and then bending all the way backwards to one side and shooting this shot from a low angle. If you catch the right light and you shoot it from the correct angle, it can create beautiful contours on the model's body and have a really nice and flattering effect. Thank you guys so much for watching this video on these top 10 creative poses that you can use for your next portrait session. Make sure you guys follow Emma on Instagram. And yeah, hope you guys like this video. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.